Hello everyone. In this video, I'm going to be talking about two terms, specialist and generalist. These are two terms that you often see in Key Stage 4 when doing sort of the adaptations topic. Because when we look at adaptations of organisms, depending on sort of where they live, what they eat, and how they sort of act, we classify them under one of these two umbrellas. Either they are a specialist or they're a generalist. Now, exam questions on this tend to be worth a fair few marks, and it's largely because you need a good few key points about them. So we're just going to define the difference between these two. So, specialists. As the name kind of suggests, they're a lot more, you could say, specialised. Now, I know this is, the word niche has its own ecological meaning, but it's almost like they have a kind of niche setup. They only thrive within a very narrow range of environmental conditions. So they're not well suited to a whole host of different conditions, but they prefer a very narrow range. And that's the first point to note when we think about specialists. Equally, they tend to only live in one habitat. So a little bit more maybe constricted in terms of adaptations. So they live in one habitat, and then, as you can see, they tend to eat only one type of food. So it's a lot more specialised in how they kind of behave, how they act. They live in a narrow range of environmental conditions in one place, typically eating one thing. If you just contrast that with the generalist. Now, generalist, again, as the name suggests, a lot more general, a lot more open, and potentially much better, more successfully able to adapt to different conditions. So we've got here as the first thing. Generalists thrive in a wide range of environmental conditions, which is the complete opposite to specialists that can only thrive in a narrow range. Equally, whilst the specialist only lives in one habitat, the generalist can live in several and adapt to those. And finally, in terms of diet, generalists tend to have a much more varied diet. They can eat a greater range of food. So they're the three things that define, really, whether an organism falls into the category of specialist or generalist. And what we're going to do is just give a few examples of them and just talk them through that often exams like to use. So here are seven photos of a variety of organisms. So we'll just start at the top and just explain what each one would come under. So we've got the koala bear. Now the koala bear, as cute it is, only eats eucalyptus leaves. It has a diet of one food primarily, eucalyptus leaves. So in terms of categorising the koala, it would be a specialist because it's only eating one thing. Equally, the osprey, the bird below, only eats fish. So because its diet is limited by one food, we too say that is a specialist. But in comparison, the cockroach on the bottom left, the cockroach eats a whole range of foods. So when classifying the cockroach would come under our generalist category. On the top right, what we actually have is a photo of what's called a sword-billed hummingbird. And they only feed on flowers with what are called long corollas. Now, because that's quite specialist, because in terms of their diet, that's really what they're feeding on. They too come under the umbrella of specialist. The photo on the middle in the right, which some of you might recognise, is of a horseshoe crab. That's really interesting because the horseshoe crab is not only able to tolerate a whole range of different temperature environments, it can also tolerate different oxygen levels. So the horseshoe crab would be our generalist because it can tolerate a wide variety of environmental conditions. And equally, the raccoon at the bottom, one of my favourite animals. The raccoon eats berries, it eats nuts, fruits, even small mammals. So again, this too would be a generalist. Its diet is far more varied than that of a specialist. And I just finish with the picture in the middle. I particularly like it. This is an orchid mantis. And as the name suggests, it only feeds off orchids. So this is our final specialist. So when looking at these two categories, the three things to remember are: one, what kind of environmental conditions does it live in? Are they narrow or wide? Number two, what kind of habitats do they live in? Is it found in one or several? And finally, the diet. Does it tend to eat only one thing, in which case it's a specialist, or does it eat a whole range of things, in which case it would be a generalist? Okay, hope that helps.